My brother Austin Jenkins picked up the custom wooden hourglass my daughter had made for him and smirked, cheap, worthless. Throw it away. Then he threw it right in her face, in front of the whole congregation, right there at his own wedding reception. Our parents, Robert and Eleanor, stood at the edge of the crowd, a small smile on their faces. I didn't object. I was Sarah Jenkins, 46, a single mother, and the CEO of a medical technology company in San Diego with a seven-figure annual income. For 8 long years, I had been providing for them, paying my parents' rent, and more importantly, investing a total of $5 million, $5,000 or $1,000 in Austin's failed tech startup. That huge investment was secured by the luxury mansion in La Jolla that I had bought specifically for him. In that moment of numbness with my daughter Leela clutching her bleeding cheek, I pulled out my phone. I coldly canceled all my investments, activated the legal foreclosure on the $5 million, $5,000 house, and disabled the automatic transfer that kept my parents afloat. I sent one last message to the family chat. From today on, you're on your own. He thought I was bragging. He thought blood ties were inviolable. But when the wedding music started, it was too late. If you've ever felt the oppressive weight of familial obligation, the silent predatory withdrawal from your bank of reason and personal success, you know that some betrayals require more than just distance. They require a complete rupture, a brutal destruction of the reality you've built. Tell me how you feel and where you are at this time to see where we go, and hit the notification bell, because this is the true story of how I deployed financial, legal, and corporate warfare to protect my daughter, and why watching the foundation of a toxic dynasty crumble is the quietest peace you will ever know. The wedding insult was the public, brutal climax. But the plot began 8 years earlier, not with a lie, but with a glossy presentation. Austin had walked into my newly purchased San Diego condo only 22, then fresh out of college, and already cycled through 3 dead-end jobs. He wasn't pitching pottery. He was pitching Ethera Tech, a complex, high-risk venture claiming to streamline the logistics of global supply chains using proprietary AI, a field far outside his actual expertise, which was mostly limited to playing video games and charming vulnerable investors, namely me. He was smooth. Dressed in a borrowed suit, his eyes sparkled as if he'd found the next gold rush. He spread pages showing flowcharts, projected growth curves, and an aggressive timeline to market entry. He talked numbers, startup costs of $3 million, $3,000, $1,000 breaking even in 24 months, with a projected profit margin of 40%. He convinced me that a female-led, sibling-funded tech venture would be a powerful narrative in Silicon Beach. I sat at the kitchen island watching Lila, who was then 8, doing her homework. He slid the legal folder across the granite countertop like it was the deed to my financial freedom, not his. I'd heard it all before: the crypto venture, the bespoke organic food truck, the luxury sneaker resale platform. Every 6 months, a new destined-to-fail idea. But this time, he brought actual spreadsheets, detailed if heavily massaged projections, and a co-signed endorsement from an obscure advisor in Nevada. The catch and the critical point of manipulation was the real estate. He explained that to secure any significant follow-on funding, Ethera Tech needed a physical presence that screamed success and stability. He needed an address that venture capitalists would take seriously, a base in La Jolla or Del Mar, not a shared office space. He proposed that I, being the established wealthy one, should purchase a high-value property, say a modern 5-bedroom house, and collateralize the entire startup loan against it. It's a win-win, Sarah, he'd argued, leaning forward with feigned sincerity. The asset value protects your initial investment. The company gets the prestige. And when we IPO in 5 years, you get your principal back, plus a hefty equity stake. I hesitated. My divorce had been finalized only a year earlier, and my money was finally mine, stable, substantial, and solely dedicated to raising Lila. My company was thriving, allowing me a remote work setup that gave me time for Lila. but Austin kept pushing the relentless narrative of family helps family and legacy. The pressure intensified exponentially with the intervention of our parents, Robert and Eleanor. They weren't subtle. Robert, always the dramatic one, started talking about his deteriorating health, his need for a low-stress environment, and how Austin's failure would kill him slowly. Eleanor's approach was more insidious. She painted Austin as the sensitive genius who needed his older sister's structural strength to truly shine. Your father and I, Eleanor, had sighed over the phone, her voice laced with disappointment. We've worked hard our whole lives just to pay rent. You're the one who got lucky. You have a moral obligation to lift up your brother and give him a clean shot. Don't you want to see our whole family succeed? The implication was clear. My success was only accidental or luck, and my duty was to be the financial bedrock for their true genius, Austin. This manipulation wore me down. I conceded not out of belief in Etheratech, but out of a desperate, fleeting hope that this massive final gift of security would finally buy me peace and silence from my parents' incessant demands. I brought Marcus Reed in. He was cold, analytical, and utterly immune to family drama. Marcus laid out the terms. I would purchase the $5 million, $5,000 house, outright securing it under a trust where I was the sole beneficiary. I would then loan Austin the required $3 million, $3,000 for startup capital, with the house serving as the official non-transferable collateral for the entire 5-year term. If Etheratech failed to make its 6% interest payments for 3 consecutive months, the loan would be declared in default, and I would be authorized to immediately seize the collateral, the house. Austin signed fast, thrilled to have the keys to a modern mansion with a view of the Pacific. I added my name below his, my hand steady my heart, a solid block of ice. I had built a perfect financial trap, a legal fail-safe that protected my principal. The moment he failed, the collateral was mine, a tangible asset far more valuable than the startup itself. The first 18 months ran smoothly. Interest payments hit my account automatically. Austin would send photos, him in the spacious home office, him hosting investor parties, which were mostly just his friends, him driving the company Tesla. The Instagram account for Etheratech swelled with images of a thriving high-tech operation. But then, just like before, the payment slowed. One missed payment. He blamed a delayed Series A funding round. Another month, no payment. I drove to the La Jolla property. The place was a mess. Expensive furniture, scattered boxes of takeout food everywhere, the pool neglected. Austin was gone, answering my call from a ski resort in Utah. Relax, sis. We're closing a huge deal next week. I'll catch up. You have the house. What are you worried about? He always circled back to the collateral, using it as proof that I had nothing to fear, when in fact the collateral was my only leverage. Meanwhile, the financial drain from Robert and Eleanor continued. I had insisted on controlling their accounts to ensure their financial security. Every month, their Social Security and small pension were immediately transferred to their savings, and I covered the $3,000 rent, utilities, and medical gap costs. Their fridge stayed stocked, their life was comfortable. They were living off my success, and they knew it. Chloe, my VP of engineering, caught me at my desk during a late-night session. She saw the stress lines around my eyes. Your family is financially leveraging your guilt, Sarah, and Austin is leveraging your love for security. I couldn't deny it, but the thought of severing those ties, the guilt, the obligation, the potential for catastrophic family fallout was too overwhelming. I kept the automated payments running for my parents, and I watched Austin's failure with a growing sick dread, knowing that the bigger the fall, the harder the crash. I waited for him to hit the third default payment, the line in the sand I had drawn. That line was crossed exactly 1 week before his elaborate wedding to Veronica, a sweet but naive young woman who ran a successful bakery in downtown San Diego. Austin had planned a massive televised wedding, hoping to use the event as a grand public display of his success. He was still living the fantasy fueled by my money, just hours before his carefully constructed life was set to burn down in front of everyone. I told Lila to make him a gift from the heart, a symbol of time, not money. She chose the hourglass, the most valuable and ultimately the most insulted thing in the room. The day after the wedding, the glitter was gone, replaced by the grim reality of legal paperwork. Austin's initial voicemails, furious, pleading, threatening to reveal my corporate secrets, went straight into my deleted folder unheard. The quiet professionalism of the financial collapse was far more devastating than his empty rage. That morning, Marcus Reed emailed the official default demand letter. Subject line: Formal Notice of Default. Austin Jenkins, $5,000 loan. The attached PDF was stamped with red ink. The 30-day cure period was now active, though Austin had already defaulted on the third required payment a week before the wedding. I immediately forwarded it to the asset recovery firm Marcus kept on retainer, the same discreet outfit that handled major corporate foreclosures across the state. They confirmed the repossession of the La Jolla Mansion collateral would be executed within 48 hours, precisely at 10:00 a.m. on the coming Wednesday with no extensions. I sat at my kitchen counter watching Lila delicately tape the shattered pieces of the wooden hourglass back together with surgical precision. She didn't speak, just sanded the rough edges where the brass hinge had scraped her skin. The silence spoke volumes about the broken trust and the deep, irreparable cut Austin had inflicted. Wednesday, 9:45 a.m. My phone buzzed with a live feed link from the recovery team. I clicked it open. The sun was glinting off the massive modern glass facade of the $5 million, $5,000 La Jolla mansion. Austin paced erratically outside, still wearing the slightly stained dress shirt from the wedding rehearsal dinner, yelling into his cell phone. A heavy-duty tow truck designed to handle large commercial vehicles rolled slowly up the driveway, followed by two uniformed security guards and a sheriff's deputy. They were not there for a car. They were there to secure a highly valuable asset pending court-ordered seizure. Austin lunged for the deputy, trying to plead his case. "You can't do this. This is my primary residence. I'm the CEO of Ethera Tech." The deputy remained clinical. "Sir, this property is the subject of a court-mandated civil seizure due to loan default. You have 5 minutes to vacate the premises and take personal effects. Anything left will be inventoried and stored by the trust." Austin was speechless, watching as the security detail efficiently changed the electronic locks and sealed the gates. They secured the entire property in under 10 minutes. The tow truck, which was there primarily as a symbolic show of force, hauled away the brand-new company Tesla parked in the driveway, another smaller asset Austin had leveraged and failed to pay for. Tourists and neighbors stopped, phones out. The whole spectacle was live-streamed not just to me, but to the recovery firm's central monitoring system. Austin chased the tow truck down the block, shouting incoherently about legal loopholes, before collapsing, defeated, on the curb. The full weight of the loss hit him when the legal notice was posted prominently on the newly locked front gate: trust property. No trespassing. Marcus was delighted. The successful seizure meant my $5,000 principal was safe, held in the form of the property. The remaining capital, Austin had borrowed nearly $3 million. $3,000 for the startup was now unsecured debt. Marcus immediately filed a legal judgment lien against Austin's future wages and assets, standard devastating procedure. But the collapse wasn't just Austin's. I opened my banking app again, scrolling to recurring transfers. My parents' rent, utilities, and allowance, all the lifelines I had cut on the day of the wedding. I had always paid the rent for Robert and Eleanor's rental home in Chula Vista on the 1st of the month. Today was the 3rd. The Chula Vista landlord, a strict property management company, did not tolerate late payments. I knew they operated on a rigorous schedule. I received a panicked voice message, not from Austin, but from Veronica, Austin's new wife. She was sobbing, hysterical. Sarah, please, you have to talk to him. They're saying the house is seized. I have nothing. I put all my bakery equipment deposits into his company account because he said it was a temporary cash flow issue. I'm tied to this. What about the wedding debt? You can't just do this to him. The sheer self-centered shock in her voice was jarring. Veronica was not toxic. She was merely naive and catastrophically entangled. She was the collateral damage, a sweet woman whose entire financial future was now tethered to Austin's reckless ambition. I felt a pang of cold pity, but no regret. Austin had made his choices, and his collateral included not just the house, but everyone foolish enough to trust him. I deleted Veronica's voicemail. I was protecting my daughter. I couldn't afford to protect his wife. The following day, Robert, my father, called my work number directly. He didn't rant. He used his most manipulative, gravely concerned tone. Sarah, your mother and I just received a notice. The landlord says we are 2 days late on rent. You know we can't manage this, especially with my heart condition. You need to turn the auto pay back on. We will talk to Austin, we promise. But you cannot risk your father's health over a petty squabble. You are morally obligated. I let the call ring out. That word, obligated, was the one that finally stripped away the last veneer of guilt. My obligation was to Lila and to my own mental health. I sent a single blunt text message to Robert. The lease agreement is in your name. You have 2 days to pay the $3,000, or face eviction. I am no longer involved. Their frantic calls and texts, now a joint effort from Robert and Eleanor, went unanswered. They quickly learned that Austin's collapse had triggered a far more immediate crisis for them, the loss of their safe, subsidized life. The luxury of criticizing me from their comfortable, climate-controlled home was over. The chain was broken. Now the fallout would begin. 3 weeks after the La Jolla mansion was seized and the automated payments ceased, the silence was broken not by Austin's direct pleas, but by a systematic, targeted attack on my professional life. I was finalizing a major corporate acquisition in Palo Alto, my focus requiring laser precision. My phone, silenced and tucked into my pocket, vibrated insistently. I glanced down. It wasn't my parents calling. It was Chloe Harris, my trusted VP and friend, sending a string of frantic texts. Sarah, check LinkedIn. Now. The old Etheratech account is active. Austin wasn't just collapsing financially. He was lashing out with the only weapon he had left, my reputation. He'd reactivated the dormant Etheratech social media account strategically, using his title as founding CEO to launch a coordinated character assassination campaign against me. The posts weren't subtle. They accused me of corporate malice, predatory lending to family, and destroying a vital U.S. tech startup out of spite. The narrative was meticulously crafted to stir public sympathy, the cruel elder sister who pulled the plug on her brother's innovation, seizing his only home for a measly personal loan. He carefully leveraged the emotional language of family betrayal, meticulously omitting the $5 million, $5,000 I had poured in the formal 6% interest-only terms, and the 8 years of continuous financial support I'd provided our parents. The comments section became a toxic battlefield. People were instantly buying the story. Family is family no matter what. She's a monster. Imagine being that rich and still screwing over your own blood. Austin's wedding guests, friends, and old business acquaintances, people I hadn't spoken to in years, were piling on. The situation escalated rapidly when he posted a grainy screenshot of a bank statement showing a wire transfer from Sarah Jenkins to Etheratech, labeling it proof of her financial control and sudden calculated withdrawal. Chloe messaged again. This is hitting the tech blogs. They're running pieces on toxic family wealth tied to the San Diego CEO. Your name is trending in the worst way. My stomach clenched, not from fear, but from cold professional rage. Austin knew exactly where to hit me, my credibility. As a female CEO, my reputation was my shield. Any whiff of scandal could jeopardize the acquisition tank my company's stock and ultimately cost hundreds of jobs. This wasn't just personal vendetta. It was an act of deliberate corporate sabotage. I immediately excused myself from the meeting, instructing my VP of Legal to take over. I headed straight to the HR and communications floor, calling Marcus Reed on the way. Marcus Austin just launched a full-scale online attack. We need to issue a cease and desist immediately and prepare a legal response to defamation. Marcus was already ahead of me. I saw it, Sarah. The moment he uses the Etheratech platform to defame you, he crosses into corporate litigation territory. I'm sending the C&D to his last known email, but we need to clean up the narrative first. Your PR team needs to be ready. Jasmine, my head of communications, met me in the war room. We tracked the spread of the posts, watching the narrative shift from family drama to corporate greed. We can't engage directly, Sarah. It makes you look defensive. We fight fire with ice, Jasmine advised. We drafted a concise clinical statement heavily approved by legal. Ms. Jenkins maintains the highest ethical standards. All past financial dealings were conducted under formal legal and standard commercial loan agreements, which were regrettably defaulted upon. Ms. Jenkins will not comment on personal family matters but reserves all rights to pursue legal action against defamatory and commercially damaging statements. The statement was posted on my company's official investor relations page and distributed to the major tech news outlets. It was cold, formal, and devastatingly effective. It immediately shifted the conversation back to the legal and financial reality. Austin defaulted on a commercial loan. But the digital drama was only the precursor. The following afternoon, my internal security team flagged an incident at the main corporate gate. The accompanying email had a subject line that instantly confirmed my worst fear: gate incident, Jenkins' parents. I pulled up the live security feed on my office monitor. There they were, Robert and Eleanor Jenkins, my parents, standing just inside the public sidewalk line. Robert was leaning heavily on his cane, looking deliberately frail, a calculated display of victimhood. Eleanor was holding a crudely fashioned cardboard sign printed with bold black marker: "Ungrateful daughter fired her own brother." Engineers were pouring out for the 4:45 p.m. rush hour. Several paused to read the sign, others lifted their phones to record. A white Tesla slowed down, the driver visibly gawking. The security booth radio crackled. My parents were staging a protest at my place of business. It was brazen, humiliating, and precisely designed to cause maximum professional disruption. I watched as two security guards in navy polos and earpieces approached them. "Sir, ma'am, this is private property. You need to move to the public sidewalk immediately." Robert straightened up, his voice rough from decades of unfiltered cigarettes. "She's my kid. This is a family matter. She's letting her brother and her sick father starve." Eleanor shoved the sign higher, nearly clipping a passing electric scooter. The guards flanked them, open palms, guiding non-contact using their sheer presence and authority. They escorted my parents to the property line. The verbal trespass warning was delivered. "Return to this property equals criminal trespass." Robert grumbled about lawyers. Eleanor folded the sign and tucked it under her arm. They shuffled back to their rattling 2005 Toyota Corolla, which they now owned outright. The engine coughed to life, and they drove away. I immediately forwarded the security clip to HR. My legal counsel drafted a formal cease and desist letter on company letterhead. It was sent certified mail to their Chula Vista rental address, the rent for which was now 3 weeks overdue. The letter explicitly stated, "Cease all contact with Sarah Jenkins' workplace immediately. Any further attempt to enter or harass personnel on company property will result in police intervention and criminal charges for trespass." Eleanor signed for the certified letter 2 days later. HR filed a copy in my record, flagging it for escalation. My professional life had been invaded, but I had responded swiftly with the clinical force of a corporate executive protecting her assets. The final boundary, the one protecting my peace and my daughter's safety, had yet to be tested by Austin himself. The eviction of Robert and Eleanor and Austin's corporate assault were ugly public affairs resolved primarily through legal documents and PR statements. But the one thing I couldn't control was the physical safety of my daughter Leela and the sanctity of our home. That peace was shattered one cold Friday night about a month after my parents were served their final trespass warning. Lila was sound asleep. I was in the living room reading a complex merger agreement. The house was quiet, the smart lock system I had recently installed, humming softly. Then the silence was ripped apart by a sound that landed like a physical blow, pounding not a knock, but a sustained heavy impact against the front door. Lila bolted upright in bed, her eyes wide before scrambling into her closet. She hid with her knees pressed to her chest among the hanging clothes, a terrifying echo of the night Austin threw the hourglass at her. I slipped out of my room, pressed against the hallway wall, my heart slamming as each beat landed like a hammer on wood. My phone immediately glowed with the Ring app notification, front porch feed live. Austin swayed under the harsh porch light. His wedding suit was gone, replaced by yesterday's wrinkled shirt. A bottle of cheap vodka dangled from one hand. He slammed his body into the door again. "You ruined my life. You took everything." His voice was slurred, echoing down the quiet suburban street. Lila whimpered from the closet. I whispered through the crack in my bedroom door. "Stay put. Lock the bedroom door. Now." Her face was pale in the dark as she nodded, her eyes fixed on the door handle. Another bang this time, a kick to the baseboard rattling the entire frame. "Open up. Where's my blood money?" The camera captured every stagger, every curse, the timestamp rolling ominously in the corner. This was no longer just a hostile relative. This was a home intrusion attempt by an intoxicated, unstable person. I dialed 911, my voice low and steady despite the adrenaline rush. Intruder at my address. Pounding on the door. Intoxicated. He is a family member but has been explicitly warned not to approach. The operator asked if we were safe inside. Yes. Doors are locked. I have camera recording. She dispatched units immediately, ETA 4 minutes. The sound of approaching sirens was fast. Austin heard them, his head snapping up. He tried the deadbolt knob one last time, pulling violently. 2 patrol cars pulled up, lights flashing red and blue across my immaculate front lawn. Officers ordered him back, hands visible. Austin resisted, arms flailing until the cuffs clicked shut. They confiscated the bottle and loaded him into the back seat. One officer knocked gently on my door. "Ma'am, are you okay? We have him secured." I opened the door, a crack showed my ID. The officer reviewed the Ring footage on his tablet and nodded grimly. "We'll book him for disorderly conduct, public intoxication, and trespassing. You need to file a formal order of protection tomorrow." The next morning, I was at the court clerk's office. I filed the Emergency Protective Order, EPO, first followed immediately by the long-term restraining order. I provided the complete Ring footage, the documented threats, the repossession paperwork, and the HR reports of the corporate harassment. The narrative was irrefutable. Austin Jenkins was a clear danger to my family's security. The court clerk processed the restraining order by noon. 200 yards. No contact. Effective immediately. Austin signed the paperwork under duress at the police station, his eyes bloodshot, smelling of stale alcohol and regret. The terms were clear. He could not call, text, email, use third-party platforms to contact me or Lila, or come within 200 yards of our home, Lila's school, or my place of work. The first violation came 2 nights later. An unknown number. Voicemail. Heavy breathing, then a hang-up. I forwarded the recording to the officer who handled the arrest. They traced the burner phone to a gas station just south of the city. Police issued a citation of $500 fine and a 90-day suspended jail sentence if no repeat violations occurred. I didn't rely on citations. I immediately ordered August smart locks, online app-controlled industrial-grade security. They arrived the next day. I installed them myself, drilling into the door frames while Lila held the level. The deadbolt slid smooth, a digital chime confirming the security. She tested the code 3 times, her finger steady now. That night, she deliberately left her desk lamp on the bulb, casting a soft, comforting glow under the door. The pattern held for a full month, light on until dawn. The closet door cracked open just in case. Austin's mugshot circulated on the neighborhood watch app. Delivery drivers recognized him. They refused to drop off packages at our parents' old address. Lila started therapy sessions through her school counselor. The counselor noted spikes of anxiety around loud, unexpected knocks. I attended parent night, learning breathing techniques to teach her. My ring alert stayed armed, the motion zones tight on the front porch. One evening, an unknown car idled across the street, engine off, only a driver's silhouette visible. I snapped a photo and sent it to the police non-emergency line. It turned out to be Austin borrowing a friend's ride. Violation flagged. Another fine. The judge issued a stern warning. The next breach means immediate jail time. Austin finally stopped appearing after that. The threat of incarceration was the only language he truly understood. Lila's desk lamp finally clicked off on day 31. She emerged for breakfast, her hair tousled, a small, genuine smile on her face. "I think we're good, Mom." I poured the cereal and nodded. The house settled into a new, quiet rhythm. No midnight pounds, no unknown calls. The smart lock beeped, a friendly, secure chime with each entry. We had legally, physically, and emotionally locked the world out. 6 months later, the high-pitched alarms of the Ring system were gone, and the constant legal notifications had slowed to a trickle. But the eerie silence spoke volumes about the new, painful reality Austin and my parents now inhabited. The legal system, slow but definitive, had done its work. Now the natural consequences of their actions and lack of financial foundation were taking hold. The first domino was the eviction of Robert and Eleanor. Since I had cut the automated rent payment after the wedding, they had scrambled desperately, trying to raise the necessary funds to stop the legal process. They tried pawning some of Eleanor's jewelry and selling Robert's old golf clubs, but it wasn't enough to cover the accumulated back rent, late fees, and court costs. They had spent 8 years relying on my automatic transfer of $3,000 every month, never saving a penny, convinced that their comfort was my permanent duty. The sheriff's deputy executed the final lockout on a rainy Tuesday morning. Robert, frail and still weak from the emotional toll, stood outside in the rain as their meager belongings were stacked on the curb. They couldn't even afford a moving truck. They spent the next 2 weeks living in an extended stay motel near the airport, funded by selling the last of their meager savings money that was quickly eaten up by basic expenses, plus the exorbitant cost of motel Wi-Fi and vending machine snacks. When that money ran out, the 2005 Toyota Corolla became their primary residence. It was a humiliating reality in the sprawling suburbs of San Diego. They parked in obscure church parking lots or quiet residential streets, moving every few hours to avoid police notice. Robert's health rapidly declined without stable access to his refrigerated insulin and quiet rest. Eleanor, once a proud, demanding woman, was reduced to begging in phone calls to distant relatives who, thanks to Austin's public social media attacks, wanted nothing to do with the toxic Jenkins family. Meanwhile, Austin was finding out that his reputation in the Silicon Beach community was completely shredded. The legal judgment lien filed by Marcus Reed was a black mark on his financial record, making it impossible to secure a new apartment, much less a new business loan. Every background check for a corporate job, and he applied for dozens, flagged the civil judgment involving the $5 million, $5,000, and $1,000 default, the trespassing charge, and the restraining order. No reputable firm wanted the liability or the public drama. His only option was gig work. I saw him once, unexpectedly. I was waiting for Lila outside her after-school art club, tucked into my high-end SUV. He pulled up in a beaten-up sedan with massive delivery stickers plastered on the side, struggling to lift a heavy catering bag out of the trunk. He was thin, His expensive haircut was long and greasy, and his hands, once used to signing investment forms, were chafed and red. He looked over, saw my SUV, and froze. For a brief, terrifying second, I thought he might violate the restraining order again. But the fear in his eyes, the raw animalistic fear of returning to jail, was stronger than his rage. He quickly slammed the trunk and hurried into the building, his head down. The delivery job, working for minimum wage plus the occasional tip, was barely enough to cover the rent for a dilapidated studio apartment outside Oceanside. It certainly wasn't enough to cover his massive legal debt, the mounting medical bills, or the personal loans he still owed his disgruntled friends. The final blow to Austin's ego came from Veronica, his wife. After dealing with the chaos of the wedding, the house seizure, and discovering the scale of his financial ruin, which had dragged her own bakery deposits down with it, she filed for divorce quietly and efficiently. Veronica hired her own shrewd lawyer, who easily proved that Austin had concealed massive debt and committed financial fraud against her before and during their brief marriage. She secured a clean break, managing to save her bakery business and securing a court order for him to pay half of the accumulated wedding debt. Austin lost everything: his home, his career prospects, his social standing, and his marriage. He was now just a struggling man with a history of fraud and a standing restraining order, living on the margins of the very successful life he thought he deserved, simply by being my brother. I had cut him off, but the American economic system had delivered the true realistic consequence: complete, irreversible social and financial exile. My parents eventually were forced to move into a tiny, subsidized housing unit, far from the comfort of their old neighborhood, their lives dependent entirely on state aid and their limited social security, the exact scenario I had tried to prevent for years by overcaring for them. They stopped calling not out of respect, but because they had nothing left to leverage. The calls asking for a small loan for a medical bill or a quick transfer for food ceased. They were gone, and for the first time in my adult life, the profound emptiness felt like peace. A year after the chaos subsided, the constant low-grade stress that had defined my life finally lifted. The phone stopped ringing entirely. Robert and Eleanor, now living in state-subsidized housing far from our city, relied solely on public aid and Social Security. They were alive, but their ability to influence or harm me was utterly gone. The only piece of communication arrived 3 months ago, tucked inside a heavily creased, slightly soiled envelope sent to my old corporate P.O. box. It was Austin's last desperate attempt, a letter penned in shaky handwriting, smelling faintly of cheap cigarette smoke and desperation. I didn't open it immediately. I put it on my desk beside a stack of successful quarterly reports and let it sit there for 2 days, a physical representation of the unresolved past. Lila was the one who finally prompted me. She had blossomed since the wedding incident. The therapy sessions, coupled with the stability of our now quiet home, had allowed her innate talent to flourish. She had won a regional art scholarship using the wooden hourglass, now perfectly repaired and stylized with sharp black lines, as the centerpiece of her submission. She saw the letter and asked calmly, "Is it worth the stress, Mom?" I picked up the envelope. I was tempted to read it, tempted by the human curiosity for closure. But Lila's question resonated deeper. I realized I didn't need his version of closure. I needed mine. I slit the envelope open with a paper knife, careful not to tear the contents. The letter was a rambling mess. It started with a half-hearted apology, blaming his actions on stress and the failure of the market. But the real purpose was immediately clear: leverage. He detailed Robert's failing health, a real verifiable issue, and Eleanor's severe depression. He wrote about their cramped living conditions, the cost of medicine, and the difficulty of navigating the welfare system. "They can't make it, Sarah. They're old. You have to step in. I can't help them. You're the only one who can. For Dad's sake, please. He needs stability before he dies. It was the ultimate predictable emotional manipulation leveraging the impending death of my father to force me back into the role of financial savior. I set the letter down and called Marcus Reed. Marcus, I received a communication from Austin. It references Robert's health and attempts to use it to extort funds. What are my liabilities? Marcus was succinct. 0. You have a standing restraining order. Any communication that can be interpreted as an attempt to coerce funds or contact is a violation. The letter is meaningless, Sarah. The best course of action is to dispose of it, document that you received a health update, and maintain absolute no contact. I took the letter to Lila. Your grandfather is ill. Austin is trying to use it to guilt us into helping him. What should we do? Lila looked at the letter, then at the wooden hourglass on her desk. She didn't flinch. He didn't care about Grandpa when he had the $5 million, $5,000. He only cares about the money. Throw it away, Mom. It's just trash. Her words were the final definitive period on a decade of drama. We walked over to the kitchen trash can, the industrial-grade one with the sensor lid. I tore the letter neatly in half, then into quarters. Austin's desperate words fluttered down into the discarded coffee grounds and paper scraps. I did, however, send one final official piece of communication. I bought a simple, nondescript postcard from a national park in Montana, a place neither Austin nor my parents had ever been, symbolizing the new vast distance between us. I wrote 5 lines addressing it to Robert and Eleanor's new subsidized apartment, sent via certified mail. So I would have a record of receipt. Robert and Eleanor, I have received your son's recent communication regarding Robert's health. I will not be providing any financial assistance or support. We are no longer family. Our relationship is terminated. All future contact attempts will be treated as a legal breach. That was it. No emotion, no regret. Just the cold, hard finality of a professional severance. The postcard was received and signed for. The expected storm of calls never came. They had finally understood the consequences were absolute. 3 months later, the acquisition closed successfully, significantly boosting my company's value. I bought a beautiful new house in the quiet suburbs of Northern California, far from the toxic web of San Diego. Lila enrolled in an advanced art program, flourishing under the mentorship of true professionals. The lesson I learned wasn't just about financial security, but about self-worth. For years, I had allowed my family to define my value not by my success, but by my willingness to sacrifice it for their failures. I was a human shield and an ATM. When I finally chose myself and Lila, the resulting chaos was terrible but necessary. The only investment I make now is in my daughter and my own peace. The house is secure, the bank account is protected, and the best part, the quiet. The value I gained was the profound, complete silence of having cut the parasitic root. That silence, bought with $5 million, $5,000 and dollars worth of collateral, and the pain of 8 years, was the most priceless thing I had ever owned.